Corey and I had a conversation with an Uber investor yesterday, and I have never seen so much vehemently outraged feedback on Twitter. People, riders, are pissed at Uber for this pricing policy, especially given what happened over the weekend. Let's start with, what do you think of Uber's pricing policy, and is it fair?
Well, I think the central question is for a non-essential service, in America, where the market sets the price, should there really be a constraint to price when there's high demand? So many industries actually do this. For instance, airlines, hotels, car rentals. Pappy Van Winkle is now going for $2,500 a bottle. Most Major League Baseball teams are doing this. So I see no problem with Uber setting price according to the market. And one of the most important things is that this is a non-essential service. It's not like everyone is entitled to a black car. And, customers have a lot of next best alternatives. They could take the bus. They could try to hail a taxi. They could actually wait, because Uber's surge sort of goes up and down, almost by the minute. Or they could simply walk. So I have no problem with a for-profit company setting a price that's sort of equivalent to what the market will pay.
Now, let's take a listen to this Uber investor, Venki Ganesan of Menlo Ventures, who I spoke to yesterday. Let's talk about essential versus non-essential. He compared Uber to a life-saving cancer drug. Take a listen.
One of the cancer drugs out there is $200,000 a year for recovery. Now, is that fair, or is it more important to make sure that $200,000 drug is there so you can get better?
Rafi, is it fair to compare Uber to a life-saving cancer drug?
I disagree with Venki. Life-saving drugs, there are very few next best alternatives. With a private car service, there's lots of next best alternatives. I think people are getting upset over something that look, Uber's a for-profit business, and they have the right to set whatever price they want. And I don't think anyone's going to die if they don't get an Uber ride during a snowstorm or late at night or on New Year's Eve.
But what about customer trust? $35 a mile, doesn't that undermine trust that customers have in Uber? In their statement, they say they want people to think of them as reliable. Availability is one thing, but price, some say price gouging, is another thing.
Right. Well, first of all, I think it's important to sort of emphasize that once again, aside from a lot of next best alternatives, it's a fair price. We have lots of alternatives. So from a trust standpoint, I don't think it's a problem. Uber's brand is not about being the low-cost leader. It's not saying we're the Walmart of private car services. In fact, it's the contrary. They're saying that we offer efficient, good service. And for that, when times where there's too much demand and we can't offer that at a low price, we're going to increase price. But I also think from a trust standpoint, it's important to emphasize that in many cities, like for instance in Boston, UberX has come out and said, we're actually going to be 30% below your taxi service. So there's a trust factor. I think it's important that Uber takes the time to explain this policy to its customers, because as we saw from last weekend, it was not clear to customers, a big uproar, and you're probably going to have the same problem on New Year's Eve.
All right, let's let Corey get in on this action. Corey, what do you think of Rafi's argument?
Well, first of all, bringing Pappy Van Winkle into this is really unfair. But bourbon is one thing. And I think the notion of being non-essential, there's one issue, right? There's the customer right issue. But I don't care about customers. I don't really care about people at large. But I really have deep passion for the business implications of this. And I think that not just about bad communication, but Uber has made a choice. And when you compare it to airlines and things, I think that's an interesting comparison, because airlines are despised by their customers for the most part. And I think that Uber's making a choice to leave the issue of cost up to the moment, and that could ultimately really damage this business. But it's also something that wasn't technologically possible to truly scale demand at the moment and scale pricing at the moment based on demand. It's the kind of thing you would see more like in a stock market than you would see in the providing of a service or a good. And it's interesting that this is possible, but we've never really seen businesses that can do this in real time and looked at what the effect will be on customer loyalty and on customers who care about this service. This shows the passion of Uber users, but it really also shows how Uber, I think, really screwed this up and really hurt that trust that they're trying to build as a new service out in this world.
Rafi, do you think Uber faces a risk of damaging their business?
Well, Corey, first of all, it comes down to what is Uber's brand. And I think that Uber's brand is that we're going to offer you something convenient and you can count on, you can trust on Uber to get to you, in a reasonable time.
Yeah, but your whole, your book's about the 1%, right? It's not, ultimately, they want to provide a lot of service to a lot of people, not just the 1%. And if it's going to be it's going to be a thing at any price they want to charge, yes, we're going to gouge you, but it's going to be for there. That's a much smaller market than the bigger market of people who want transportation at an affordable cost.
Well, for clarity, I would disagree with the word gouge. Gouge is a very inflammatory word, and this is a situation where there's excess demand, and somehow it has to be rationed, and price is one of the things that they use as a mechanism. And customers always have the right to sort of stand on the street and try and hail a taxi.
Right, but it's not about rights. Right, it's not about rights. It's about building a business. And if they're going to limit their ability to grow their business if they tick off a lot of people. If they don't tick off anyone, they'll build a bigger business. So they're clearly choosing where to draw the line.
It's a good question, and I think it's really important that they take the time to explain this pricing strategy, and so people fully understand it. So a great example of a company that didn't explain its pricing strategy is Netflix a couple of years ago. As you may recall, they all of a sudden increased the price of their streaming service by 40%, and within 3 months, Netflix stock went from $271 to $75. And
well, Rafi, obviously, we'll see with time what Uber decides to do here. But I spoke with Travis Kalanick, the CEO of Uber, a few weeks ago, and he told me that they basically take about a 20% cut. Why not just take a smaller cut on the rare days when demand is so high and supply is so low that they need to, raise the price 3 or 4 times? Why not pay their drivers a little more to get more drivers on the road? For the benefit of their customers and for the, for the purpose of building trust and reliability.
Well, certainly when there's a surge price, the drivers certainly get 80% of that. So are you sort of saying that perhaps Uber should lower its cut from 20% to 10% in surge pricing instances? In this
rare, I'm not saying that surge pricing on, the many days that there are 1.5, 2 times, but when it's up to $35 a mile because it's a snowstorm and it's dangerous, drivers don't want to drive, but everybody needs a ride, why not, in those rare instances, make an exception and take a smaller cut?
I guess I don't see the reason to do that because, once again, there certainly are people out there paying that price, and this is their business model. And at the end of the day, Uber is about at the bottom line is making profit. So I wouldn't see a reason why they have to do it. And I don't think that they should be apologetic for this pricing strategy. That's what they're doing. Clearly, customers, they didn't do a great job of conveying it. Now it's their job to convey it to customers. And like any sort of a luxury high-end product, sometimes you can afford it and other times you can't.